Article 52 is just formality. There shall be President of India. It is Article 53 which is important. So Article 53 makes President of India as the chief executive. It means that's why let's say he is the most superior functionary because he is the chief executive. All other functionaries are subordinate to President. And this article also says all the executive powers of union shall vest in President. This all powers vest in President. This. And then let's say that further it says Article 53 goes on saying, as a chief executive, he should exercise powers either himself or body subordinate to him. This. It means if you read Article 53, it seems that the President is all-powerful person. This. It shows that President is all-powerful person. But Article 53 cannot be read alone. This. So, let's write few lines thereafter. Article 53 shows that President is an all-powerful person. All-powerful person. However, Article 53 should not be read alone. Article 53 should not be read alone. Rather, it should be read along. Article 74, 75, 77 and 78. And then it becomes clear that the President has formal powers. President has formal powers. President has formal powers, and the real powers lie with the real executive. Right. However, its significance is that due to parliamentary democracy, President has been accorded. Due to parliamentary democracy, President has been accorded formal powers, and the real executive acts in the name of President. The real executive acts in the name of President. It is based on UK parliamentary democracy, where the king enjoys formal powers. As there is a popular saying, the king can do no wrong. The king can do no wrong. It is because the king does not take decisions. It is because the king does not take decisions. Does it mean, let's say, does it mean? Does it mean? First, president has only formal powers. Only formal powers. He does not enjoy any discretions. He does not enjoy any discretion. Any discretion. Next. Can it be said that the office of president is rubber stamp? Office of president is like rubber stamp or a titular head. T-I-T-U-L-A. A titular head. T-I-T-U-L-A. Titular head. Let's write. Till 1976, President was not bound by advice of Council of Ministers. Advice of Council of Ministers. And hence, the relationship was not very clear between formal and real executive. Not very clear between formal and real executive. Formal and real executive. Okay. That's it. Article 74 states, there shall be Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister to aid and advise President. Who shall act in accordance with the advice. In accordance with the advice. So, advice was made binding by 42nd Amendment Act. It means that before that, Article 74 may have should or any language, let's say, which was not making it binding on President. But now it is binding on President. Yes. That will come later. Yes. So, this you should know that. Then, this is Article 74. Then, Article 75, you know that. If you read 75, 1, 2, blah, blah, clauses. So, here, let's say, basically, it deals with PM and COM. Right. Appointment of Prime Minister is done by President. Then Council of Ministers done by President on the advice of Prime Minister. Then they are collectively responsible to Lok Sabha. Right. They hold positions during the pleasure of President. This. So if you see this, it shows that even if they hold position during the pleasure of President, but pleasure of President means pleasure of Prime Minister. That section will elaborate when we'll take PM and Council of Ministers. That we do not elaborate here. We'll take when we'll take real executive, there we'll elaborate it. This. Then Article 77. It is related to making rules for the convenient transaction of business of the government. It is about making rules for the convenient transaction of business of the government. Hence, government has brought Government of India transaction of business rules 1961 and Government of India allocation of business rule 1961. This. So we have made two different types of rules. One is allocation. The allocation means you try to allocate the role and functions. Transactions are related to, let's say, that allocating status also. So these two rules become basis for, do you know, COM. The COM composition is decided by, rank and status is decided by these rules. A minister gets a cabinet rank. This is not mentioned in Constitution. It is under such rules. The way Article 118 become basis to frame the rules for the functioning of legislature, similarly Article 77 is responsible for framing rules for the functioning of executive. This. So simply you should know that key rules, because when we'll take Council of Ministers, so composition and others are not provided in Constitution. Constitution only writes Council of Ministers. Hence, it is as per rule rather than Constitution. This. And this, President cannot frame rules himself. He'll have to frame rules as per advice. And finally, let's say Article 78, which will talk you after a while. So let's take this. Then what it was done, if you bring all the four together, so 53 should be read along the four articles. And if you read along the four articles, then you will know that even if President has, means he has invested all the powers, but he cannot act himself. However, we take in name of President. That yesterday also we were saying this. So this, now what they did is that then there was one change in this, and 44th Amendment was brought. 44th Amendment brought कि once advice can be written. This clause was brought. Right. So let's write on this. By 44th Amendment Act. By 44th Amendment Act. It was introduced that President can return the advice once for reconsideration. Once for reconsideration. And if advice is again tendered, then it is binding on President. It is binding on President. Next, Article 75. Provisions show that President provisions show that President decides portfolio, appoint Prime Minister, ministers, and also remove a minister on the advice of Prime Minister. On the advice of Prime Minister. Prime Minister. In case of Article 77, which is related to transaction of business rules, which is related to framing of rules for convenient transaction of business of the government, which is done on the advice of Council of Ministers. Next, Article 78. It is the duty of Prime Minister to communicate to President time to time about the decisions of the government. It is the duty of the Prime Minister to communicate to President time to time about the decisions of the government and various developments. President can also seek any information from Prime Minister. President can also seek any information from Prime Minister, including information related to any such cabinet minister, if in case of differences in opinion, among cabinet ministers. It shows it is the Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister. It shows it is Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister that takes decision rather than President. Second paragraph. Therefore, even if in the Constitution it has not been clearly stated, that President is the formal head, Prime Minister is the real head. Articles 74, 75, 77 and 78. Articles 74, 75, 77 and 78 make it very clear that decisions are taken by Prime Minister, Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister. And President acts on their advice. on their advice. Good. So is it clear? These are the provisions, basics. Let's say if a question we expect from basics, so that is how you should write. Suppose it is asked that, what are the provisions which make president as formal head? Basic question if you say. कुछ बहुत सारे लोगों को ये नहीं पता है. This, so they will not be able to prove it. इसलिए कि वो लिखा नहीं है ना, ऐसे आपकी पॉलिटी बुक में ऐसे नहीं लिखा है. Right, yes, D.D. Basu can write it. Although, let's so formal head, even if you say 53, but you have to read along 74, 75, 77, 78. And it proves, means they cumulatively prove that president is the formal head, even if it has not been mentioned in the constitution. Nowhere it is mentioned. So that way we can consider president as formal head and minister, council of minister headed by prime minister as real head. Then the question comes, let's say, whether president is bound by, president is always bound by, whether president is always bound by, president is always bound by advice of Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister. Advice of Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister. Headed by Prime Minister. Yes. President is not always bound by advice of Council of Ministers. Council of Ministers. However, he or she lacks constitutional discretionary powers. Constitutional discretionary powers. In bracket, discretionary power means autonomy to act on his own. Autonomy to act on his own. Autonomy to act on his own. Right? Let's check. President has following circumstantial oblique situational discretionary powers. Situational discretionary powers. First, advice of Council of Ministers can be returned once for reconsideration. Advice of Council of Ministers can be returned once for reconsideration. Reconsideration. Second, after elections, in case of lack of clear majority, after elections, in case of lack of clear majority, in bracket, experience between 89 to 1999. It is President's discretion which party to invite. It is President's discretion which party to invite. Which party to invite? No. Any other discussion? PM dies तो PM dies, the council minister goes. Yes, it is dissolved. Then we are talking executive powers. You are talking legislative powers. There is difference. These are all executive powers. Veto power is a legislative powers. Legislative powers will deal separately. Right. Let's try. Right. That is not a prominent thing, the thing you are saying, because he cannot nominate anyone. He will nominate only a candidate proposed by the party.
After nomination, party
Yes, yes?
after nomination, party elects the person as a leader of party.
No. Understand this. Suppose there is death of Prime Minister, like say Indira Gandhi. So now, who is going to serve as acting Prime Minister? So, it will be decided by the party itself first. The party will select, and that name would be, this party will propose the name, and that name will be appointed by President. President cannot appoint on his own any person as acting Prime Minister. Right? There is no such provision. Even, yes? No. That is the advice of, इसीलिए तो misnomer है. So, very clearly you should know that. चूंकि इतने बार बोला जाता है कि president does, president appoints, तो आप भी believe करने लग जाते हो. यही गलती है, मतलब प्रॉब्लम ये है. तो हर जगह यही लिखा होता है कि president appoints. Right. तो आप जो है you start believing in this. But except the things we are talking here, most of the things, let's say that most of the things are decided by President on the advice of Council of Ministers. By the time we'll finish you, let's say all these things, you will know, not by only this, legislative power also, judicial power also, emergency power also. Then by that time you will try to know that what are the areas where President can act on his own. This, which are very less. This, in general, President has to act as per advice of Council of Ministers. Yes. That also he sends on the advice of Council of Ministers. इसलिए कि डिसीजन गवर्नमेंट लेती है ना, तो प्रेसिडेंट को क्यों जरूरत पड़ेगा कोर्ट से एडवाइस लेने का? Decisions are taken by government. So when king does not do wrong, it means king does not take decision. This you have to understand. The king does not do wrong. So when king does not do wrong, it means he does not take decision. That's why he does not do wrong. Otherwise, to err is human. You know also that to err is human. There can be no human that he cannot do any error. But it is said the king cannot do any wrong. It means king does not take decision. So when king does not take decision, so for what king will send reference to judiciary? In that case also he does on the advice of Council of Ministers. Basically government को चाहिए उसके ऊपर view, president को नहीं. But government goes through president. उस प्रेसिडेंशियल रेफरेंस में अटॉर्नी जनरल रिप्रेजेंट करते हैं. कोई भी केस है प्रेसिडेंशियल रेफरेंस का कोर्ट में, सो इट इज रिप्रेजेंटेड ऑन गवर्नमेंट साइड बाय अटॉर्नी जनरल, राइट. Anyhow, let's talk smoothly one by one. So what we are saying is, yes, next is that in case government has lost majority in Lok Sabha, in case government has lost majority in Lok Sabha, and tenure of Lok Sabha is left, Lok Sabha is left for more than 6 months, and Prime Minister tenders advice for dissolution of Lok Sabha. President may not act as per advice. Rather, he will first try to find out formation of alternative government. If not possible, then the house is dissolved. Next, in extreme case, if it is found that Prime Minister is involved in corrupt activities or conspiracy against the country, President can dismiss Prime Minister. So these are some areas of discussion, right, which are very limited. The discussions are also very limited because President will not dismiss Prime Minister, because that may result into a crisis. If Prime Minister is supported by Council of Ministers, so what he can do? So it is not possible. Only in a very extreme case, because he is the custodian of the Constitution, he has to uphold Constitution also. He has to ensure that the Constitution is being followed by the government. In that extreme, which has not arisen so far. Like, you know that there was one time when Bofors scam happened. Hence, Gyani Jail Singh was thinking to dismiss Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. And S Radhakrishnan was thinking to dismiss Nehru due to loss of India in Indo-China war. So these are some, let's say, inside stories. And some information, inside information. Just developments. So this we can consider, but it has not happened because Prime Minister was also thinking to dismiss President, means impeach President Gyani Jail Singh. Yes, that is how her candidature was cancelled by the Allahabad High Court. Then that resulted into emergency. Right. It comes under corruption. It is a corrupt practice. Right. Electoral malpractice. That is how electoral malpractice started and doctrine of committed bureaucracy started, both during Indira Gandhi tenure. And that was basis for Allahabad High Court cancelling her candidature. So she was disqualified as a candidate. She is disqualified as a candidate, disqualified as a Prime Minister. How you tackled it? By emergency. That was immediate cause of emergency. So, right. So ऐसा कोई मेंशनिंग नहीं है लैंग्वेज में कि discretion of president will not be questioned. It is case by case. Case by case is कि when ordinance, the president can proclaim ordinance and his decision will not be questioned in the court. This is the language written. Here it is not written. In 74 it is not written, 75 it is not written, 78 it is not written. There is no such language as such. So that does not come into picture. Yes. But when you have a specific related case, like when we'll teach ordinance, when we'll teach emergency, there it is mentioned. His decision will not be questioned by the court, but courts have questioned this. So let's write next. Right. Since president has very limited discretions, and he has to act as per the provisions of the Constitution, on the advice of Council of Ministers. Therefore, can it be considered that the office is like a rubber stamp? Or does it have any significance? So what do you think? Is it rubber stamp?
President is proactive, it has not
Right. Depends on situation. Let's try that. Saying rubber stamp is very extreme characterization of the office of president. Saying rubber stamp is a very extreme characterization of the office of the president, which is not appropriate. Because of following factors. Which is not appropriate because of following factors. First, he does have some situational discretionary powers. Second, he can return the advice once for reconsideration. Next, he is not supposed to work as rubber stamp. Rather, a thinking person who should apply his wisdom, and keep assessing the decisions of the government that they are in accordance with provisions of the Constitution. that they are in accordance with provisions of the Constitution. Like first, K.R. Narayanan, two times exercised his power to return advice in case of imposition of President's rule. In case of imposition of President's rule in UP and Bihar, on the grounds of law and order. In his return advice, he stated that law and order was not a ground for imposition of President's rule. Law and order was not a ground for imposition of President's rule. In bracket, Sarkaria Commission had recommended that law and order should not be the ground for President's rule. Bracket close. Interestingly, President's rules were not imposed in both states. So this is the power of President. In fact, this is how you should have good President. Right? Who should speak, should not remain silent. So this is the only President since independence. Okay. Once President returned the advice for reconsideration. Right. This. So that is how we'll find the next. APJ Abdul Kalam, Return Office of Profit Bill. Next, President can seek any information. Regarding decisions of the government under Article 78. Article 78. Next, President time to time on some auspicious occasions addresses nation in which President expresses concerns regarding the state of affairs like the then President Pranab Mukherjee on repromulgation of ordinances and joint sitting. Repromulgation of ordinances and joint sitting. joint sitting. Right. Their references become an indirect questioning of government's decisions. Questioning of government's decisions. In fact, when president speaks anything, negative against the government, directly or indirectly, it draws attention at national level. It draws attention at national level. And government comes under moral pressure. Therefore, the significance of the office is that it works as a conscience keeper of the government. So that the government should not deviate from the path of constitutional governance. That's why he is considered as custodian of the Constitution. He is considered as custodian of the Constitution. So we have written here significance part also. Here that it will not write towards end. This is how you should know that. He should be ideally a thinking person, a weighing person. He should be, let's say that, weighing down all the decisions of the government, even if he does not speak. He should be well informed, he should be aware, these things. We don't have? Anyhow, right. So, basically this is how you'll find that he should be informed person. And he has his own secretariat. He has his own secretary. You should know this, which we don't need to mention. But president has his own secretariat, he has his own secretary, he has his own legal advisors, he can take legal advice. So, he has all these, let's say that, necessary think tank, you can say that, which can give him, or he is himself, let's say that, an informed functionary, or he has reached to that level on the basis of certain level of achievements also. Hence, a question was asked, not in GS paper, but it is a good question, by the way. At times it has happened that optional questions are asked in GS paper, you should know that. So, once it has happened that one optional paper was asked in ethics paper, basically, related to RTI. Anyhow, so there is one question asked. Since in GS paper such questions have not been asked, so there is no precedent, so you cannot understand which type of question can be asked. But a question is asked, let's say, that when there is imposition of president's rule, so it also amounts to indictment of president. When there is imposition of president's rule and it is declared unconstitutional, then it also amounts to indictment of president. That was the question. Very innovative question they asked. We expect what the president's rule will be asked on the basis of use and misuse, but they ask other way around a question directing towards president. So how it is an indictment to president? Right. Yes. So it is the question here when it has been asked, it is an indictment to president. So it is indicating that the president is not a rubber stamp and he should exercise his mind. When Council of Ministers is giving advice to president to proclaim president's rule, he should apply his mind. And if it is not a ground for president's rule, then he should return the advice. At best what he can do, he can return the advice. If he has returned the advice for imposition of president rule, again the government has tendered the advice, then he will not be indicted. Then the indictment will go to government. But if he has not done his duty and that president rule is declared unconstitutional, so it is his dictatement. If government has not applied wisdom, so you are the last authority, let's say that, final authority in case of executive to exercise your wisdom. And there are cases where president's rule have been declared unconstitutional. That is how the question. So at times UPSC asks very innovative question. Innovative in the sense he demands, let's say that, with broader understanding of office of president, not merely knowing the president's rule. This. Anyhow, so this way we can consider what we can say. So what we have written? Yes, so we have written the significance of the office. Even if he is not supposed to act, or he is not supposed to, let's say that, always interfere, means he does not have discretionary powers, but he should be a thinking person. That is how we can consider. Or when Prime Minister time to time has meeting with President, he meets President, so President can, let's say, share his concerns, isn't it? So this you can consider. Anyhow, so let's slide next now. So by this way you should understand whatever now we are going to deal executive powers. So those executive powers we can say. So even if President is formal head, but he has application of his mind, he is not like rubber stamp. This you should know. This. So last line you can write, even if President is formal head, he has application of mind. And should be a thinking person, not a rubber stamp. Not a rubber stamp. He should be a thinking person and not a rubber stamp. In fact, you should know, don't write. Effective leadership of president means he should work as the grand, let's say, parent, you can say that. He is like a grandparent. The role of the grandparent is to facilitate and exercise check on basically children, isn't it? Especially son, right? So that there is decision in the family as per the values of the family. And we see, हालांकि यहाँ पे नहीं है, polity में नहीं है, but corporate governance if you take. So corporate governance, company, let's say, the country is like company and he is like chairperson of the company. And Prime Minister is like CEO of the company. The role of chairperson in a company is to ensure that the CEO is able to take effective decisions. The chairman of a company is a formal functionary, not a real functionary. The CEO is the real functionary. So there in corporate governance, we relate with President and Prime Minister. Here we relate with Chairman and CEO. Both way you can take if you understand this. So his role is like chairperson of a company. This, although state is not a company, this, but just a comparison you can say. Then let's write role and functions. Role and functions as chief executive. Role and functions as chief executive. Chief executive. So far it is clear. I guess you understand he is a formal head and only in some situation he can act. Like he can return one's advice for reconsideration. Then in case of, let's say, no clear majority, then he can invite a party as per his choice. And in case of Lok Sabha tenure, basically the government has lost its tenure in the Lok Sabha. In that case, he can, let's say, that cannot act as per advice of Prime Minister. Rather, he will try to find out alternative, provided tenure of Lok Sabha is left more than 6 months. This. So these are some of the situations. It means beyond that, all activities he is doing as per advice of Council of Minister, even if it is written that it is the President who is doing, which he will do now. So let's start. First, President appoints Prime Minister. President appoints Prime Minister and on his advice, appoints ministers and also allocate portfolios. See, this section we will talk you details when we'll take real executive. So we'll not elaborate much on this. Next point. President appoints constitutional and statutory functionaries. Constitutional and statutory functionaries, including chairpersons.
The first step towards achieving your dreams is having the right coach. Get the best education with Lukmaan IAS and make your UPSC dreams come true. Download the app now.